Good morning. This week, the American people confirmed what we have been saying for months, that the overwhelming majority of voters disapprove of President Biden's handling of key issues. 73% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of inflation. 57% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of energy, and 59% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of the border crisis and illegal immigration. Yet House Democrats want to talk about everything except the crises facing our country. Instead, this week they are doubling down on their reckless spending with a bloated appropriations package that will only make our economic crisis worse. Once again, Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats are putting their socialist wish list ahead of the challenges facing our communities. Inflation is sky high. Illegal border crossings are up, and our communities are less safe. This is not a coincidence. This is what happens when one-party Democrat rule fails America. In my home state of New York, we are seeing a crime wave, including pro-abortion activists firebombed and vandalized an upstate crisis pregnancy center, which cost the center hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs, critical funds that should have been used to save lives. This was just one of the over 50 acts of violence and intimidation against pro-life individuals, churches, and organizations since the initial leaked Supreme Court draft. And what have we heard from Democrats about condemning these? Silence. Crickets. The Biden administration and House Democrats did nothing about the violent crime wreaking havoc on our businesses. They dragged their feet, passing legislation to protect the Supreme Court justices, and now they remain silent on the far left's latest target, crisis pregnancy centers. Whether it is the crime spikes, the historic border crisis, or the cost of groceries, Republicans remain focused on addressing the issues facing hardworking Americans, while Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and House Democrats are not. I would like to now pass it over to my colleague, Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, who serves on the Appropriations Committee. Mario.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning, everyone. It wasn't that long ago, right, March, that we just finished the appropriation cycle. And you'd think that the lessons that should have been learned. But we're kind of starting in the same place that we were last time. The Democrats are now operating under fake numbers, unilaterally decided by them, with no input from Republicans. And there's no secret what needs to happen for us to have appropriation bills. The defense number is going to have to go up, and there's very strong bipartisan support to increase the defense number, and non-defense discretionary is going to have to go down. The non-defense discretionary has, in their bills is increased by 14%. And so they prioritize some of the traditional liberal things that, frankly, are just unreasonable under any standard. Let me just give you some highlights, for example, because some of their increases in non-defense discretionary are just dramatic. 20% increase for the EPA, 17% increase for HUD, 30% increase for the Federal Trade Commission, 20% increase for OPM, and 433% increase for election security grants. And there are some areas where they increase that, frankly, it creates huge future liabilities. In essence, it becomes almost like de facto mandatory, and that's the case, for example, with Section 8 vouchers in the THUD part of it. And so, unlike what the Democrats continue to believe, you cannot address inflation by increasing spending, and yet that is what they're trying to do again. And so, while they do all that, they fail to address the energy crisis. They actually make it worse. They pursue some partisan climate initiatives. Offshore oil and gas activities are further restricted. Oil and gas inspection fees are increased, again, just making a situation even worse. And something that we all know has to happen if we're going to have appropriation bills. We should have learned this. We just did them in March. The pro-life protections are stripped out of these bills again. There are no Hyde protections. So again, as we should have learned from just a few months ago, if we're going to have an agreement, this has to be a bipartisan agreement. Defense has to go up. Non-defense discretionary has to go down. They have to stop their war on domestic energy and remove all these controversial partisan riders. Then we can move forward. But it seems that March was such a long time ago for them that they've even forgotten the lessons that they should have learned just a few months ago. Mr. Joyce.
Thank you. Good morning. All Americans are getting pummeled by the high inflation rates in this country. They've been the highest since 1981. Gas, shelter, food saw the largest increases, which means that inflation is hitting the middle and lower class families that much harder. This should serve as a reality check for President Biden and my Democrat colleagues, and their out-of-control spending habits and anti-American energy policies have serious consequences. But instead of addressing the ongoing economic burdens our constituents are facing, these out-of-touch bills double down on wasteful spending, with some accounts receiving double and even triple-digit increases. In my subcommittee, the Interior and Environment Subcommittee, not only did the majority add new controversial policy riders that would curb our energy independence, but they also proposed a roughly $7 billion increase in discretionary spending. Again, that's with a B, $7 billion, all while lacking an overarching budget plan. The increase for EPA alone was 20%. I'm a bipartisan guy, but I can't in good conscience support a bill when our national debt has surpassed $30 trillion, inflation has hit a 40-year high, and Americans are facing gas prices that are 43% higher than this time last year. If we truly want to grow our economy and leave our country better off for the next generation, we need to rein in this out-of-control spending. We have to support domestic energy production and cut the red tape and get the federal government out of the way of American innovation. Republicans stand ready, willing, and able to work with our colleagues on the other side to produce a bipartisan, fiscally responsible spending package that accomplishes just that and prioritizes the needs of everyday Americans and their families. And now Michelle Fishback.
Oops, sorry. Thank you very much. And as part of the Democrats' agenda, they are proving again, yet again, that they want to strip law-abiding citizens of their Second Amendment rights. The latest so-called assault weapons ban would end the sale of some of the most popular rifles sold in America today. Not only is this unconstitutional, but it will impact many other aspects of American life. For example, the loss of revenues from the sales of these firearms will have devastating impact on the Pittman-Robertson Fund, which helps states pay for environmental conservation efforts. The bill provides no alternative for how to make up for the severe decrease in conservation funding. The bill also outlaws stabilizing braces for pistols. Stabilizing braces are often used by hunters with disabilities, including our disabled veterans, to help them safely hunt with pistols. This bill disregards our Constitution and disrespects sportsman community throughout the country. Thank you very much, and it is my honor to turn it over to our whip, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Michelle. And here we are facing another week where Democrats will not bring up any bills on the House floor to lower gas prices, to lower inflation, to secure America's border, to address the serious problems that families are facing. You just saw over the weekend, Joe Biden came back from Saudi Arabia. Hat in hand, he goes over there begging them to produce more oil. You had the French President Macron telling him that the answer was going to be no. Yet he flew Air Force One 5,700 miles over to Saudi Arabia just to be told, no, they won't produce more energy, when he could have just stayed here, where the answer would have been yes. We've got all the energy that we need to meet America's needs and our allies around the world, and it's Joe Biden who keeps saying no to American energy as he begs foreign dictators to produce the oil that we need to meet our demands. That's why families are struggling under an 88% increase in gas prices at the pump. That's how much more families are paying today than when Joe Biden became president, 88% more. But what are they bringing to the floor this week? As Mario and my other colleagues talked about, a massive increase in spending, 14% increase in spending in an appropriations bill that was drawn up in a hyper-partisan way to drive inflation even higher. And when you think about what's hurting families the most right now, it's high gas prices, it's high inflation when they go to the grocery store. If they can even find the products they're looking for, it's costing them 15, 20, 30% more to buy those products. And if somebody wants to buy a home right now, maybe they want to be a first-time home buyer. Well, good luck, because next week we're expecting another 1% increase in interest rates because of all of President Biden and Speaker Pelosi's spending, and their answer is to add more spending in Washington. They're so out of touch with where families are right now, and House Republicans are going to continue to propose ideas to fix these problems. We brought forward a package of energy bills that would lower gas prices tomorrow. I've presented them directly to the majority leader time and time again for months now, and not a single one of those bills has come to the floor. All bills that would not only be bipartisan, but would lower gas prices today for families and start lowering inflation. And so we're going to continue pushing to restore sanity as they continue going down this path of driving inflation higher, embracing an unsecure border with millions of people coming across our border illegally that's driven fentanyl deaths through the roof. Last year, 100,000 young people died of overdoses, primarily fentanyl, coming across our southern border because Joe Biden won't do his job in securing the American people. We're going to continue pushing to solve these problems. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions. Yeah.
Democrats have two bills coming up, the contraception bill and then the LGBT DQ same-sex marriage bill. I'm curious how you think the conference is going to be voting on these and if there's a feeling like Pelosi is just trying to box you guys in.
Well, Pelosi's trying to continue to play political games. Again, not bringing any bills to address inflation or gas prices. You know, if you look how poorly written the contraceptive bill is, we have looked at trying to, for example, get more over-the-counter contraceptives. What they do in this bill is they allow a drug that's not even approved by the FDA to be sold commercially, which would jeopardize women's health. That's in their bill. You see groups like National Right to Life and Susan B. Anthony oppose it because of concerns over abortion drugs. So again, they're not trying to address what are real problems. They're going to create more problems if they actually allow drugs that aren't even approved by the FDA to be sold under the term contraceptives. That is what's in their bill.
So do you think that Republicans are going to be voting for these bills?
We just got the bills really in the last couple of days, so I think our members are looking over it right now, and we're going to be filing a motion to recommit. I know Catherine McMorris Rogers with Energy and Commerce Committee. These bills didn't go through committee, but she's got a number of things she's been working on, I know, on the contraceptive bill. And so, you know, I would imagine most of our members would vote against that. Not sure we'll probably be split on the other bill. Yeah.
Just following up on that, are you planning to whip against the contraceptives bill, and if not, why?
We're whipping this week against the appropriations bill. You know, we don't whip many bills in any congressional cycle. I think we're probably at around 25 for the 2-year period right now. So there's not that many bills we whip. On a bill like the appropriations bill, there's a real chance we can get to 0 Republicans voting for that massive spending increase bill. And so we are going to be working this week to hopefully get to no Republicans voting to spend double digits more in Washington. That'll drive inflation higher, as well as things like, as Mario said, they take away Hyde protections so that taxpayer money would go to fund abortion. So we're whipping against that bill. There are not that many we whip against, but that's one where I think we can get our membership to 0.
Last question.
You said you expect your caucus to be split on the gay marriage bill. I just want to drill down on that a little bit. Do you think there's going to be potentially dozens of Republican votes for that?
Oh, I don't. Every member obviously is going to have to make their own vote on that. We just got the text recently, so we'll see. Yeah, last question.
What's your view, the conference's view on what's emerging out of the CHIPS bill in the Senate?
Yeah, the concern we've had on that is that they're trying to shift the spending into the mandatory side. You know, if you look at where the biggest problem with our debt and deficits are right now is that so much new spending is moving into the mandatory side, which is in essence, autopilot spending. It's not something that gets brought up in the appropriations bills. You don't have that same level of oversight where it has to be appropriated every year. And it just continues to add to the deficit opposed to us setting priorities and saying if something's going to be a priority, like bringing more chip manufacturing into the United States, shouldn't we debate how best to do it? And the example I love using is the 21st Century Cures Act, where Congress came together, and this was in a Republican majority, where we said we want to put real effort into curing major diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, ALS, where the focus wasn't there at the FDA and NIH. And we wanted to put an extra $2 billion there, but not just printing money and adding to the deficit. We actually took that money from other places where it wasn't being spent in as high of a priority area, and we moved it into that area where it's actually, we made dramatic reforms to the FDA along the way too, and it's led to real cures for diseases. It actually set the groundwork for the 3 different proven and effective vaccines for COVID under President Trump's Operation Warp Speed, because we made reforms, but we prioritized existing dollars to do something that we felt was important. Just this idea that you add 30 plus or 50 plus billion dollars in new mandatory spending when it's mandatory spending that's driving our debt, but also driving inflation to record highs. That's something that they should reconsider on the Senate side. We'll see what they end up doing. Thank you all. We'll see you on the floor.